It's Wednesday night, which means it's behind enemy lines night, special edition, because this is the playoffs. Not necessarily the team that we expected to play, but a worthy opponent nonetheless. Looking very forward to this one tonight. There's so much to talk about with this young Packers team, the veteran 49er team on their way to try to win a Lombardi trophy. We're going to talk about all of it next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And as I said, it's a behind enemy lines playoff edition, 49ers, Packers this Saturday evening. And I've got a very special guest with me to break it all down. It is Andy Herman from a Pack-A-Day podcast. Andy, how you doing tonight, my man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. Excited to talk Packers 49ers with you. As you mentioned at the onset, I don't know that a lot of people were expecting Packers 49ers divisional round game. I certainly don't think Packers fans were a handful of weeks ago when it felt like it was going to be just a task to get into the playoffs in the first place. But here we are, and it should be a very, very fun matchup.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely. No 7 seed has ever won in round one. I know it's only a few years old, but big deal. And the Packers are a very young team, and it makes them interesting because they are a little bit of up and down. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get from them. 1 week, they're giving up a ton of points to Carolina and losing to Tampa. And then another week, they're beating the Chiefs, the Lions, and the Cowboys. So you don't know what to expect. And that's kind of the way young teams work and operate. If the 49ers get the best version of Green Bay, things could get interesting. But if they get the version that maybe isn't so good, they could win going away. This game should be a lot of fun. I'm excited for the matchup. I think it's interesting because the 49ers and Packers have a long playoff history, as you know, Andy. And the Rodgers thing, Rodgers not being here, oddly enough, even though it's 49ers and Packers again and two historic franchises, it's a fresh look to me. This is a fresh matchup because the Jordan Love aspect. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. And the 49ers were kind of kryptonite to the Aaron Rodgers era. It did not go great in those matchups. And I'm not necessarily predicting or saying that that's going to necessarily go different this week for Jordan Love. This is going to be a tremendous challenge for the entire Packers team, much less Jordan. He's obviously playing tremendous football. But yeah, I don't know that anyone from the Packers side of things, after seeing so many losses to the 49ers during that era, it's a change. It's different. It's new. And to your point from earlier, yeah, if you guys get the Packers team that showed up against the Giants on Monday Night Football, you guys can rest easy. You guys got this easy. You'll go on to the next week against, whoever wins that other matchup. You get the team that shows up against Kansas City, Detroit on Thanksgiving, Dallas this past week. Buckle in, because that team can beat just about anyone on any given day. And we saw it last week, like not only win going away in fairly easy fashion. Jordan Love's playing as well as any quarterback over the second half of the season, as well as any player over the second half of the season. And Green Bay fans are right back in the midst of, hey, when you've got a quarterback playing like that, you've got a puncher's chance to beat anyone on any given Sunday. Green Bay has San Francisco has a lot of different ways, I think, to win this game. But when you've got a quarterback playing like that, like I said, you've got a puncher's chance.
Yeah, most certainly. And I want to get into the injuries a little bit because this certainly always plays a factor. There's always a game within a game. And for me, when I'm watching the 49ers play, or even when the 49ers aren't playing, and you have a team moving on, you're hoping that team stays healthy because you want the best versus the best. You just want the best possible matchups. Absolutely. Now, Green Bay does have some injuries coming out of that game. The 49ers are very healthy. They're coming off a bye week. Essentially, one player's not going to play. That's Cleveland Farrell. He's a rotational defensive end. But outside of that, the 49ers are healthy. I can't say that about Green Bay. Dylan didn't play going into the game. He didn't practice again today. Jair Alexander retweaked his ankle. Sounds like it might be a little bit of a different injury, but still a tweak of the ankle that was hurting. give me an outlook on this team. Who do you think plays? Just, I know it's early still, but who do you think's in? Who do you think's out this weekend?
Yeah, 3 injuries of note. You mentioned AJ Dillon and Jair Alexander. The other is rotational edge rusher Kingsley JJ Nigbare, who tore his ACL in this past game. At least that's the report. He is going to be out, obviously, for the foreseeable future and probably even going into next year. Let's start with that one. That is a definitely a bummer that he tore his ACL, and definitely a piece of their rotation up front. He's been playing good football. Actually, I thought he was their most impactful edge rusher in this past game. But they still have Rashawn Gary. They still have Preston Smith. They've got their first round pick, Lucas Van Ness, to rotate in. They've got an interesting player in Brenton Cox, an undrafted free agent that I think he's played 5 snaps this season. He had 1 pass rush and won it easily. So he's got a 100% pass rush win rate on the season. But that should be a fine rotational group. They should be able to supplant him without a major issue. Jair is the huge one in this game for a variety of reasons. One, having somebody that can at least attempt to stop Brandon Ayuk, I think on the outside would be super important, especially if Green Bay wants to get a little bit more aggressive. If they don't have him, I think it changes things entirely. Now, they've won a lot of games without Jair. Corey Ballantyne, Carrington Valentine, and Keyshawn Nixon, their 3 other corners, have started a bunch of games together, including that 3-game win streak in the middle of the season against Justin Herbert and the Chargers, the Lions on Thanksgiving, and then the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. So they've gotten away with it, but it definitely changes things if Jair is not out there. Now, Joe Barry, defensive coordinator, did say today that Jair is ahead of where he was a week ago at this same point. And he played a week ago and had obviously that crucial interception, but did tweak it in the game. But that's the biggest one you want to keep an eye on this week is the status of Jair. He did not practice today. There is hope that he might be able to practice tomorrow. But again, keep an eye on that one. And then AJ Dillon is an interesting one where Green Bay doesn't have a lot of depth behind Aaron Jones. But one of the issues over time has been that when they have had Dillon, they sometimes don't get the ball to Aaron Jones enough. And not having Dillon has almost forced them to give the ball to Aaron Jones more. And surprise, surprise, it's been wildly successful. And you had this huge chunk of the season where Jones didn't play. So he's got fresh legs and he looks fantastic. So in a way, it almost is like forced them to get one of their best players the ball more. And it's kind of worked out really, really well. So Dillon being out, I don't think is actually the crippling effect that it might seem to be. I think actually it almost might help Green Bay, as odd as that sounds. But Jair, bar none, the biggest one to keep an eye on this week.
Yeah, Jair Alexander, I think, is fantastic. For a few years there, I thought he was the best corner in the league. Now, his biggest issue is just staying healthy. He's often not on the field, which is unfortunate for him. But when he is, he's an elite corner, I believe, in this league. So that'll be huge. It sounds like he's going to play, though. So good news for the Green Bay Packers. But there is some possible rain in the forecast. Now, it's been up and down depending on what app you're looking at or what time it's been changing. But let's assume that there is some rain in the forecast. How do you think that this impacts the game?
Let me actually, I'm going to throw this back at you for a second.
Yeah.
How do you feel Purdy would do with conditions? Has there been an instance of Purdy in conditions, and like what's the confidence there?
Yeah, it's one of those things that we kind of got to see him perform well. There's been 2 times that I would say in Purdy's career where he's looked human, I guess, where he hasn't been elite. Well, 3 times, I guess, if you include Baltimore. I forgot that one was pretty recent. Trying to wipe that one from my memories. But the other 2 times, the other 2 times were against Cleveland, where it was a little bit sloppy and it rained. And the first time really was against Seattle in the playoffs for 1 quarter, and it was drizzling in that first quarter. A lot of people chalked it up to nerves. I thought it could have been weather, and I think that we found out later when they played Cleveland that it definitely probably was the weather that played a factor in that. So not saying Brock Purdy can't. What's interesting about Brock Purdy, even though he's smaller in stature, his hands are not small at all. So he should be able to sling it just fine. But for some reason, he hasn't performed well when it's been wet. And I'll throw another one out there. You've got 2 teams that special teams, in particular, kicking field goals is a roller coaster. You add in some rain or wind. I'm curious to see what the kickers look like in this one.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think there's advantages and disadvantages on both sides. I think when you have a Jordan Love, he's got the huge hands. He's got obviously every tool that you need at your disposal. you don't feel really too concerned about him ripping it through the conditions, and especially when he needs to. So I think there's some confidence that, like, all right, if Purdy does struggle in those conditions, maybe Love can actually fight through it a little bit more and maybe have a little bit more success. At the same time, Green Bay's given up 4 games so far this year of 200-yard rushers. And we all are very familiar with the game in the divisional round. Was it divisional round or an NFC championship where
Yeah.
San Francisco, if they would have literally, I wish they would have in hindsight, if they would have ran every single down in that game, they would have beat Green Bay easily. They basically did, right? And if Jimmy Garoppolo didn't throw a single pass in that game, they still would have crushed Green Bay easily in that game. So different teams, obviously different defensive coordinators, but Green Bay has still had their druthers in run defense. It's been better as of late. It's been much better as of late. They haven't given these huge game-breaking plays in the run game, and they've held teams down a little bit more. But it's still a situation where Green Bay can run the ball, but I still like San Francisco's ability to run the ball a little bit better. But again, I think to your point, special teams could be an adventure on both sides. And I think Jordan is still going to be able to throw the ball. But at the end of the day, I don't think either way that we're going to get to the end of this game and be like, man, if it just would have been clear weather, it would have gone total. I think the rightful winner will be determined regardless of conditions in this one.
Yeah, I agree. And I got to push back here, SDN. Appreciate you for throwing this out. Brock Purdy has 9.25 inch hands. So I don't know where you got the 8.5 inches. That I don't know that any quarterback in the league, other than maybe Pickett, I don't know his hand size, has hands that small. So his hands are not not that small, brother. Brother Bob says, yes, fun for us Niners fans, not for the flashback. All right. Brother Bob is he's my habitual line stepper, so forgive him. He says, Andy, are you ready to lose again to the Niners? What that okay, you know, he's definitely pressing in here, but the way that I see it is obviously the Packers have had their issues with the Niners in the playoffs. And as an older Niner fan, I remember when Brett Favre was winning all those games for the Packers and how frustrating that was as a Niner fan until they finally got over the hump. I feel like this one would be different though, because it's not Aaron Rodgers and the team wasn't necessarily expected to be here. I feel like they're playing with house money. Do you feel like Packer fans feel the same way? If they lose to the Niners again, do you think that'd be a gut punch, or is it like, hey, we had a hell of a season, we're moving on?
I think the overarching feel in Green Bay is that this has been a super successful season for Green Bay, regardless of what happens in this game. Now they're going out to compete, they're going out to win. And I've kind of said going into last week, same thing with Dallas, is it's all house money until the game kicks off. And then you're immediately invested and want the team to do well. And as soon as something goes wrong, everyone's going to be calling for everyone and everything that went wrong. So like the house money thing sounds great. And I still think once cooler heads prevail, people will realize like, hey, this was a successful season no matter what. But I know he's talking a little bit of smack there, but listen, Packer fans over the past 2 weeks have got to rub it into Bears fans that Green Bay owns the Chicago Bears every single time. Yeah. We got to talk smack to Dallas that, hey, we've owned you for a while now. So yeah, listen, the 49ers have owned Green Bay for a while now. I'm not saying it's necessarily going to always end that same way, but if Green Bay Packer fans get to throw it out at the last 2 franchises we faced, we have to be able to take it from the one that's owned us lately. And then, like I said, that's just what sort of adds to the stakes of this is, can they finally beat that team? It's funny, the 3 teams remaining, the Lions, the Buccaneers, and the 49ers are all the teams that recently have eliminated the Packers. Last year, the Packers had a play-in game against the Lions in the last week of the season to get in. Lions beat them, eliminated them. 2020 was the NFC Championship game against the Bucs. The years before and after that were against the 49ers. So, like, these are all the teams lined up that have eliminated the Packers as of late. So Green Bay's trying to exercise some demons through the remainder of this playoff run.
I did see that. And I will say the Packers fans have a lot of bravado. Surprisingly, I started posting videos on Sunday after we found out, you know, who they were playing, or Saturday or whatever it was. And man, instantly just Packers fans flooding the chat. I was like, oh, I love this. Okay. I don't know. I mean, you guys are confident in your young team, but you're definitely going to hear it if they don't win. Calvin says Niners do well playing from ahead. Should the Niners opt to receive the ball if they win the toss? Kyle wouldn't, but should they consider it? Yeah, I definitely think so. And I think that was a big key to last week's game. The Packers decided, hey, we're going to take the ball, we're going to score first, and it put a lot of pressure on Dallas, and it went very well for them. Very, very well for them.
Yeah, I think so too. If I were San Francisco, I would definitely receive. You got to make sure you put up points, I think, though, because the way this Green Bay's offense is playing, if you do get the ball first and you don't put up points for either of these teams, it's just like now you're really behind the eight ball. But yeah, I do think that if Green Bay wins the toss, my guess is they probably receive. I don't think it's set in stone, but I don't think when you have the success that you had the week ago against Dallas and like it's been working for them lately, I don't think they go away from it. So that'd be my guess. I think Green Bay wants the ball. So if you're the 49ers and know they probably do, if you win the toss, maybe just go the opposite and say, no, we're going to take the ball first. We're going to go down and score the points. You guys are the ones that are going to have to play from behind. Good luck and go from there. But it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about Purdy and Love. Two quarterbacks playing phenomenal this year, especially towards the tail end of the year, the last 10 games for Love in particular. And two guys who took very different paths to get here. Very different paths to get here. Talk to me. We'll go opposite. Talk to me about your thoughts on Brock Purdy as a Green Bay Packer fan. What are you seeing from him? What do you like from him? Do you respect his game? Do you fall into the game manager aspect, or how do you look at Brock Purdy?
I do think there's a level up from the game manager mentality. And I do think that he's bringing different things to the table than some of the other Kyle Shanahan quarterbacks have in the past, specifically a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo. I know as a Packer fan, I am certainly far more concerned about what Brock Purdy can do within this offense than I was in the past of what Jimmy Garoppolo could do. And that's saying something because Jimmy Garoppolo beat the Packers on a couple different occasions. So yeah, I do think that there's a little bit more there. I am interested to see, like, again, with Brock in this offense, we know that he is set up in, again, what's the perfect offense right now in the NFL, what everyone's trying to emulate and copy, and with just superhero playmakers. When you have CMC and Debo and Ayuk and Juszczyk and Kittle and just a plethora of playmakers, the best, arguably the best offensive lineman in football at left tackle, like you're just setting a lot of people up for success. Now, I don't think it's just that. And I think you could make not necessarily the exact same argument, but with Jordan Love, he has a lot of weapons that are performing at a very high level as well. How I define both of these quarterbacks right now is two quarterbacks that have total command of their offense and are doing exactly what their offenses need them to do. Screw the game manager stuff. Both of them have had the ability to make ad-lib plays when they need to. And both of them are playing at a super high level. And up until that Ravens game, I mean, Purdy was in the MVP, legitimate MVP conversation. So listen, he's a super talented dude. They did a phenomenal job unearthing him in the seventh round. And he's been exactly kind of what that offense needed at the exact right time. So yeah, no, I think he's a very talented quarterback. And now like the main question for him to answer is how does he do it in the playoffs, and not just this week if they win against Green Bay and the following matchups as well. But he's really a great fit for that Shanahan system and just what San Francisco's been doing so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jordan Love, I tweeted it out and you could see it. It was evident. I mean, you see the influence from Aaron Rodgers in his game. You see a lot of the same throws where he's off the ground, falling off his back foot. You see that influence, and you also see the influence of he doesn't turn the ball over a lot. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way a ton. And I think that's the best asset you can have, especially as a young quarterback, is just protecting the football. And that's what Jordan Love is doing. Brock Purdy, you said it all. I mean, he's having a phenomenal season as well, was in the MVP race. What did Packer fans think of moving on from Aaron Rodgers, especially when Love struggled a little bit early? Do you feel like there was some faith lost in him and he had to kind of regain that? Or do you feel like Packers fans kind of knew it would be a little bit of an up and down first season for him taking over for Aaron Rodgers and were willing to stick with him through that? Like what was your feelings as he wasn't playing his best football early on?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of a journey to this. And I think the first thing is, Packer fans have obviously been through this messy divorce in the past with the Favre era. And then you had the previous, couple of years ago where Rodgers demanded a trade out of Green Bay. And then they got things figured out and he stayed. And then there's sort of been each of these years, is he going to retire? Is he going to come back? Is he going to ask for a trade? Is he going to want out? There was thoughts that maybe he was going to get traded to Denver when Nathaniel Hackett went there. That happened the previous year. And then you got to this offseason and it had sort of been known again, he might retire. He might want to go somewhere else. And it definitely was to the point where not all Packer fans, obviously, but it was definitely the majority were, if not ready to move on, were comfortable moving on or like understood the decision to move on. And that certainly got to a much greater level when it was the whole like darkness retreat. And like, I think everyone at that point had like fatigue, not of Rodgers, but of just the entire situation and just being like, listen, Jordan Love's here. He needs to play. If you retire, if you get traded, like we're just ready. We understand. And then again, not everyone, but definitely I felt like the majority at that time. And then I think Jordan in the first game to come out and have the success against the Chicago Bears, because there was a butt ton of chatter online of Bears Packers in the offseason. And now you don't have Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre, and you guys are going to, now you're going to feel the pain that we felt for all these years. So for Jordan and the team to go out in week one and beat the Bears, and then for the first three quarters of the Falcons game, dominate until they sort of choked it away, specifically on defense in the fourth quarter. And then to have the comeback that he did against the Saints in week three, he built up enough in the bank through those first 3 weeks to be like, this isn't great yet, but there's enough here that like, all right, he's legitimately a starting quarterback. Then you had a little bit of a tail off, didn't go great, but there were enough signs still where you're like, he's still a legitimate starter. There's still enough here to be like, all right, we need to see this play out a little bit longer. And then the Steelers game came and it went from like, all right, is he a legitimate starter to like, oh, all right, we've seen this before. He's just going to be another like amazingly great quarterback, and then capped it off this week with his best performance against the season against the Cowboys. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. It's not fair to the rest of the league, but it certainly feels right now like they went back to back with Favre, Rodgers, and Jordan Love.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting because Jordan Love, as the season has gone along, you see that improvement. You see him protecting the football. And shout out to Rich Keltz. He talked about the 3 interception game against the Raiders. I know it wasn't that long ago, but it when a quarterback hasn't played and this is his first full season, I mean, that really was kind of light years ago. Quarterbacks get better as they play. They just learn the game. They see coverages. They get more comfortable in the offense. And I think that early on, at least from what I saw from the Packers or remember from the Packers, was they had some injuries at the tackle position. I think that was a little bit troublesome. Aaron Jones was in and out of the lineup, and that caused a lot of issues. Watson's been in and out, and a lot of young receivers all trying to get on the same page. And now everybody, receivers, tight ends, all of them, they're all on the same page. Jones is healthy. The offensive line is clicking. Everything has kind of come together for Love and this Packers team. Doesn't mean that those turnovers still can't show up in this game, but I would tend to believe that Love is more the quarterback we've seen the last 10 weeks than what you saw in the Raiders game or some of these other games potentially.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree. And just real quick on that, the way that they were set up to start the year, you knew that it was going to take time for this offense to gel because of all, like they didn't have a receiver that had played more than one season. And that was, Christian Watson, Romeo Dobson, to a lesser extent, Samori Toure. All of their other wide receivers were rookies. All of their tight ends were rookies outside of Josiah DeGuara, who's more of a fullback at this point. The plan going into this season was, hey, we still have a really like a returning offensive line led by David Bakhtiari, and we've got Aaron Jones. And while Jordan Love figures it out with all these wide receivers and tight ends that are so young, we can lean on that. And the receiver that we can count on the most is Christian Watson, who showed the most last year. So we've got this receiver we feel good about. We've got Jones, we got Bakhtiari, and immediately Watson doesn't play the first quarter of the season. Jones goes out third quarter of the first game and misses a ton of time and really hasn't been himself up until that Carolina Panthers game 4 weeks ago. They miss a ton of Aaron Jones, and Bakhtiari goes down for the season after week one. The three things that they felt like they could count on going into the year and that they could lean on while everything else figured itself out were all of a sudden gone. And now he had to figure out everything on the fly with all of these young rookie players, a running game that wasn't working. And they did it. And then they finally got Watson back and they got Jones back. And then things just sort of took off from there. But what they had to go through when they lost all those players made them stronger, especially once those players got back. Obviously, Bakhtiari's not back, but I think you get the point from the other two.
Yeah, absolutely. And Strawberry React says, so Love gets a pass, but Brock had a bad game against the Raiders, and he's the worst quarterback ever to play in the NFL. Got it. Do you mean Ravens? Raiders was last year. I assume you mean Ravens, and I don't think you would have got that sense from this channel. Maybe that was other people, but I'm going to keep it. I'll keep it a stack, and I feel like both of them deserve a little bit of grace. Anytime you're within the first 3 years, first 3 years of actually playing, there's so much growth that's going to happen. And some players fall off, start out hot and fall off. Some players don't start out great and they turn out great. And some players are just bad or just good. But you really need time for these players to develop. I think they all deserve that. Brother Bob says, Andy, who's your quarterback too? Because Bosa will break love in the second. Who is the backup in Green Bay?
Sean Clifford, Penn State Sean Clifford, the guy they
Oh,
drafted in the 6th round. And everyone's like, why are you drafting him in the 6th round? He's not even draftable. He's done a nice job in preseason. He hasn't really got any opportunity in the regular season, but he's looked in in preseason training camp, he's looked like a legitimate backup quarterback. He's never going to be more than that, in my opinion. Like he's ever going to be a starter in the league, but can he be a guy if down the line where if Jordan misses 8 games or something that he could go 4-4 in that stretch in the right conditions? Yeah, maybe. But if it ends up being like similar situation to you guys last year where every one of your quarterbacks goes down, yeah, it's probably not going to go great for Green Bay.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave says, what up, Jess? I missed After Dark chasing my tail, but you were just starting when I hopped in the truck, so I'm thankful. I think the best teams are left. NFC East is out. Green Bay looks banged up. Next year, they are dangerous. It's interesting, Dave. We were wondering, what team is going to step up next year? And when that question was asked, it was probably around midseason. And I don't think anybody had Green Bay on their radar. There's always a team that comes on late in the season that starts to show, whether it's a bunch of close losses, what have you. Green Bay definitely is going to make things interesting in the North next year. And they're very young and they draft well. I'm curious to see what they look like going forward, and them getting this experience, win or lose this weekend, is going to be vital for their future. They're going to be an interesting team for years to come, as long as Jordan Love can continue to be a high level quarterback.
Big time. Totally agreed. And I think Green Bay's a year ahead right now. Nobody expected a divisional round playoff game with a playoff win already in their belt in 2023. 2025 really was the date of like, can you open a window by then? And now they've got this core of a team already. They've got the foundation set. They've got 5 picks in the top 100. They're set to reload and restock this team at a very expeditious pace. And again, they're already putting people on notice with their youth and excitement on offense, especially.
Yeah, Brother Bob says Alexander cannot stick with Ayuk and Debo will truck him. Ooh, I don't know, man. Alexander's good. Ayuk's very good. I don't think anybody can cover him one-on-one, but if anybody's going to contain him a little bit, I think that Jair Alexander certainly can be that guy. We got Slim coming in over from your channel. He says, one key to the game, will Purdy flinch like Dak did? Very different mentalities. Dak, I think, is a pretty good quarterback, certainly can put up numbers, certainly can win when things are going well, but mentally, I don't think he's near where Brock Purdy is. Brock Purdy came in day one, played well in the playoffs. Really, you look at his young career so far, has only had a few bad moments. He's mentally put together a little bit better than Dak, I believe. So I don't think that you're going to break him the way that you did Dak Prescott. I wouldn't count on that if that's how you think you're going to win the game.
I would agree.
All right, give me there we go. Give me a lesser known player on the Packers, somebody that most fan bases may not know about, but will make a difference in this game. Somebody that Green Bay Packer fans are excited about and the world should know about.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 names. It's hard because a lot of their defensive players are either known or just not very good. And their offensive players are now starting to get very known very fast. I'll talk about a weapon on offense first that everyone's super excited about and has really come on extremely strong in the second half of the year. I think people are starting to know the name Tucker Kraft a little bit more. This is a 3rd round pick. Everything was about Luke Musgrave, their 2nd round pick at tight end coming into the season. Musgrave was the guy. Kraft played sparingly to start the year. In fact, very early in the year, their undrafted free agent waiver claim from the Minnesota Vikings, I think in that first week, I think Ben Sims outplayed Tucker Kraft at times this year. And then all of a sudden, Musgrave goes down and Kraft has to come in. He's been phenomenal. He has been so good. He's gotten like that from training camp day one, or really rookie minicamp, OTAs, whatever you want to call it, from day one of being in Green Bay till now as a blocker. it's not the same dude. Like you would swear like it's like somebody else is in his place because he looks so lost at the beginning and he's a legitimate blocker now at tight end. And then he came up with a huge first down last week where he had to run away from Stephon Gilmore, and he's got that sort of freaky ability. Yeah, he's got great run after the catch ability. He's come out of nowhere to have a very big impact on this team where now it's like him and Musgrave have the ability to have this beautiful 2 tight end combo moving forward. We haven't even seen a ton of it yet because Musgrave's just kind of getting back from injury, but that is so exciting for Packer fans moving forward. But if he's a little bit more known, I'll go with a defensive player, another rookie. That's Carl Brooks. He's a rotation interior defensive lineman, and he plays a decent amount of snaps, probably 20, 30 snaps every single game. He's got a great first step. He's got super aggressive, physical, and active hands. And he's like kind of got a one move sort of thing at this point in his career as a rookie. 6th round pick out of Bowling Green State. Had great success at Bowling Green State. And the big question was going to be, would it carry over? He's not great against the run yet. He's been better, but he's not great in those sort of situations. But as a pure pass rusher, I think he has some potential ability to win against the 49ers interior defensive line. Would not be shocked to see Carl Brooks get a sack in this one. That's probably a little bit more of an unknown name for 49ers fans to kind of keep an eye on in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to give, those are very, very good names, very familiar, and the good choices. A couple other ones in the chat people were throwing out, I think were good choices as well. And the Packers are so young that I really think there's probably 5 or 6 guys that you could go with comfortably.
For sure.
The 49ers are not so young, but they do have some younger players contributing, or at least guys that maybe are lesser known. I'll go with 2 as well. I'll give you one on offense and I'll give you one on defense. On defense, I'm going to go Diamador Lenore, who started outside corner this year and was asked to move inside with some of the changes they needed to make. Oliver was not cutting it. They wanted to bring in Ambry Thomas to play the outside. And because Diamador Lenore is such a Swiss Army knife, he was able to do that. He was a 5th round pick out of Oregon and has just grown leaps and bounds over the last few years, really come into his body. Very, very good corner. And a lot of people don't know about him outside of San Francisco. I think they're starting to know. You obviously know. You watched the film. Very, very good player. And then I'll give you another one on offense. A lot of people talk about Trent Williams, and Trent Williams is fantastic. But playing right next to him is a hell of a player as well. And, listen, when you've got the left side that is locked down the way that it is, and Aaron Banks has allowed them to do that, it's a big advantage, big advantage. And the 49ers will choose to run left more often than not. The right side of the line is not the best, but Aaron Banks is coming into his own. And I think he's going to be a very, very good guard for a long time. And he doesn't get a lot of shine because he plays next to Trent Williams, but he's a people mover. Very, very good player. Watch out for him as well.
2 players I loved during the draft process. I was I think Lenore was considered almost like a 7th rounder going into the draft. And I'm just like, this guy's really good. He's got great movement skills, and he's proven it in the pros so far. And Banks just looked like a ready-made guard from day one. And I know he's been an impressive performer for the 49ers as well. But 2 guys I definitely liked and have been kind of keeping an eye on in their time in San Francisco. 2 really fun players.
Absolutely. Before we get back to the super chats, I just want to make sure that we're going to stay on time here. I know you have a hard out. You've got a radio appearance coming up next, so we'll make sure to get you out of here on time. So before we get to predictions, we'll hit the super chats again. But before that, we got to talk about some of the matchups in this game, good and bad. So I'll let you go first. Give me a matchup that you are confident in when it comes to the Green Bay Packers versus the San Francisco 49ers this weekend.
It's interesting. I don't know that I have one that I'm this is a win no matter what. There's a couple that I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on from a good news side of things from Green Bay. Rashawn Gary versus Colton McKivitz is one that I'm keeping an eye on. Gary has not been super impressive really in the past 6-7 weeks. He's been fine. A few weeks ago, he had 8 pressures. He's had 1 sack in that time frame. This is a guy that they need to be a game wrecker. Going into last week, the thought process was the same of Rashawn Gary versus Terrence Steele. That's the one that Rashawn really needs to win, and the Packers really need to find a way to win. And Gary didn't. He's had 3 pressures in the past 2 weeks, 0 sacks, and he just hasn't been quite as dominant. I feel like if they're going to get to Brock Purdy and rattle him a little bit and just kind of make them feel their presence, it has to be Rashawn versus McKivitz. So that's one that I'm looking at. And then really the other one is right next to it is the Packers interior defensive line against the 49ers interior offensive line. We talked about Banks, obviously, but Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, Carl Brooks, TJ Slayton, those guys have to be able to win on the inside. We know that the Trent's probably just going to shut things down on the left side. And this is not a secondary with or without Jair that can really just, win against a team that's loaded with stars like the 49ers is. They have to find a way to stop the run while keeping an extra safety back, which is no easy task against McCaffrey. And they've got to find a way to pressure from the interior on Purdy to make it so that he doesn't have the time to find all of those amazing weapons down the field. They have to win those matchups up front. That's Green Bay's like one thing that they're actually decent at. There's nothing that they're really great at, but that's the one thing that they're better at. If they can't do that up front, it could be a very long day at the office defensively for Green Bay.
Well, the chat agrees with you. Brother Bob calls him Colton McGiveth. So that's definitely a matchup that should win. Gary's a very good player, even if he hasn't been playing at the elite level that you would hope for. I think that's a favorable matchup. It might be a slump buster for him against Colton McGiveth. Not a fan of that one. Maybe that was going to be my matchup to avoid, but I'll have to come up with another one here. But I will say the run game for the 49ers, very, very confident in that matchup. The Packers have had some interesting games on defense. I think 4 times they've given up over 200 yards rushing. Now, here's what I find interesting with them. Last 3 games, they've only given up 88 yards per game. They've played a mixed bag as far as rushing teams go. This is not including the Dallas game, by the way. But the final 3 games of the regular season, one of those games was against Chicago, who was second in the league in rushing with around 144 yards per game. They held them to 79 yards, if I'm not mistaken. So that was very impressive. Now, I know that a lot of Chicago's rushing comes from Justin Fields, but containing a mobile quarterback with a running back and, getting receivers downfield kind of shows you how the defense might be coming together. That being said, I think the 49ers should be able to run the ball. They should be able to run the ball with relative ease as long as they stick with it, and I don't see them getting away with it. That's an advantage for the 49ers. I feel like that is something that I'm very confident in going into this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Green Bay doesn't have the talent to stick with all the playmakers that San Francisco does. And Joe Barry versus Kyle Shanahan is not a fair fight. It's mean. It's cruel. It's unusual. It should not be allowed. But what Green Bay's done these past 3 weeks is they've done the little things better. It's not anything super sexy, but it's all the important stuff. They've played much more sound defense. They've communicated better. They've stayed in their lanes. They've stayed in their gaps. They've tackled better. They've rallied to the football better. And they've just played cohesive, 11 players doing the same thing, moving together as a unit, rather than just 11 guys doing their own individual thing, which we saw a lot of earlier this season. So the goal for Green Bay is not to be like, we gotta shut down this 40. The goal is like, can you keep them in the 24-point range? If you can keep them in the 24-point range, then Jordan Love in this offense is going to have a chance to go out and win this game. Not saying even that they would, but they would have that chance. If San Francisco gets in that 38-point range, like, it's probably just good night, nurse. You're going to have to try again next year. So that's the goal for this defense. It's not to be like, can we get a bunch of turnovers and limit them to 10 points? No, it's just like, can you hold them to 24, 26, somewhere in that range and give this offense a chance? But the 49ers have a multitude of matchups that they're going to be drooling over and being able to attack this Packers defense.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go flip side. A matchup that I'm not as confident in, or at least a little bit concerned about. And I would just say the bevy of weapons at the disposal of Jordan Love. It's interesting. Most teams have like a guy that you key in on or two. But when I look at what the Packers are doing, arguably your best receiver throughout the season, or at least as of late, didn't even get a catch last week. How the hell does that happen? And yet they blew the Cowboys out on the road. That tells you that Jordan Love is just literally finding the open player, and he has confidence in all of them, as he should. They're all relatively good. They're all young. They all bring a good skill set to the game. And so because you can't key in on just one guy or two guys, you really have to guard everybody at all times. And Jordan Love will go through his progressions and find them. He also can make all the throws. So that means vertically, horizontally, whatever is there, he will take. And so as good as the 49ers defense is, and I'm confident in the 49ers defense, I think when you have that many people that you're confident in, it makes it very, very hard on all defenses, and it's going to stress them a little bit. And I'm curious to see coming off of a bye week what the game plan is and how it holds up, and can they force a mistake from Jordan Love, which you have not seen as of late. They may force him to be a little bit dink and dunk and not be able to go over the top, but he can do that. And we've seen Matthew Stafford and Cousins and some of these other guys be able to do that for a full game and get away with it. Joe Burrow's another one. So if he can play mistake-free football and just continue to find the open man, because this is the NFL, there will be somebody open. If he can find them routinely, it can get interesting. So I would say that is a matchup that I'm looking forward to. A little concerned, but looking forward to. What is a matchup that concerns you a little bit?
Yeah, I've got a couple just really quick on what you were mentioning. There's no perfect defense in the NFL, right? Like you're saying, like there's going to be a guy open, there's going to be a vulnerability. What Jordan and this Packers offense have been so good at is finding that vulnerability and exploiting it over and over and over. And it can be different things. And that's where Green Bay's plethora of playmakers, they all have different things that they do really well. And they have just very similarly, not to the same level, but San Francisco has all those different pieces that do very different things, but they do exactly what Shanahan needs them to do. It's the same, again, to a little bit of a lesser extent for Green Bay, that they have all these different tools and pieces that fit in perfectly within the offense. And whatever they need on that given play, they can do it. They find it, and Jordan Love's been exploiting it. So that's what's going to be so fun, especially against a defense as talented as the 49ers. The two that I'm watching quick are Hargrave versus Josh Myers. Josh Myers is the weak link on the Packers offensive line. Hargrave obviously has the ability when he wants to wreck any given game. And if they can get that isolated one-on-one and win that matchup, I think that, like, obviously the easiest pathway to the quarterback is right from the middle. And if they can get, they might have to bring 5 guys on some downs to get that isolated one-on-one. But just doing that and getting Hargrave matched up there, I think that's a matchup that Hargrave can win. The other one is just simply the 49ers base personnel and what the hell Green Bay tries to do against it. Because when you've got CMC, Juszczyk, Kittle, Debo, and Ayuk all out on the field at the same time, I don't know what Green Bay wants to do. They can't come out in base. If they come out in base, they like Green Bay has been awful. And I mean, all Tampa Bay did all day against Green Bay for the most part was spread them out with 5 players, a lot of times coming out of very similar type of formations, spread them out, get easy matchups. Dallas tried to do it. They did a ton of it late. They tried it early on the very first third down, got CeeDee Lamb one-on-one with Quay Walker, had him open, and Dak and CD just missed on the play. And then they ended up punting it away. And the rest was just the game went downhill from there. But all of a sudden, if Green Bay goes base or even just in nickel, you spread those guys out, Green Bay out with those 5 weapons on the outside. Purdy's just going to be able to be like, oh, who is Quay Walker, Preston Smith, or whomever, Devondre Campbell, Isaiah McDuffie matched up on. We're just going to keep spamming that as much as we want to. And at the same token, if Green Bay comes out in nickel and you guys are in that base formation, you also have the ability to just run it down Green Bay's throat with the offensive line play, and certainly with Kittle and Juszczyk blocking in front as well. That there's not a great answer to that, and I legitimately don't know that what Green Bay does just matched up, and like Shanahan's just going to have the defense in like spinning in circles, I think. And I don't envy Joe Barry and what he tries to draw up against this 49ers offense.
This is a question for you. Shades by Chardals wants to know, do you expect Aaron Jones to go over 100 yards?
I think it's going to be extremely dependent upon what type of game this is. If you're a 49ers fan, you obviously want to get ahead and force Green Bay to throw the ball. I'll say the same thing I did against Dallas. If I see at the end of this game that Jordan Love has 45 attempts, 40 plus attempts, things probably didn't go well for Green Bay. That probably meant that Aaron Jones is probably in the 8 to 12 touch range, and they had to throw the ball a ton, and maybe they made it a shootout, and maybe there's still a slim chance that they could get away with a win, but it probably just didn't go well. Green Bay has to find a way to stay balanced, just like they did against Dallas a week ago. I think if this is a game where San Francisco gets ahead and can have Chase Young and Nick Bosa and Hargrave and those guys pin their ears back, I just think that's going to be too big of a challenge to overcome for Green Bay. But if Green Bay does stay balanced, and I don't like, well, again, I think San Francisco has a little bit of an upper hand on this, just in the experience and the level of playmakers that they have. This Green Bay offense is not fun to stop right now. And you, again, very similar thing where you try to stop this run and they will pick you apart in the passing game. You keep your safeties back like Dallas did last week, and Aaron Jones will go for 100 without trying. So San Francisco is going to have to be on the top of their game as well. But if Jones is at 100, I really like Green Bay's chances of at least having a solid chance to win this game.
It's a great answer. Samir says, like and subscribe, y'all. Both channels. Definitely do that. Juan may not have been here, or he asked the question before you answered it, but we'll give it to you real quick again. Do you think Purdy is a system quarterback?
I don't. I think he's proven enough already. I think, again, the playoffs will be a huge another testing ground for Purdy to see what he can do through the remainder of this year and just kind of going forward. But man, for 49ers fans, just think back, late 7th round pick, you're not expecting anything, and he's shown up to be this already. And as you mentioned earlier, he's just going to continue to improve. He shows enough off script that I don't think he's just a system quarterback. At the same token, he's in a perfect system with the perfect weapons, and that certainly helps out Purdy as well.
Samir says, Andy, how would you rank the remaining quarterbacks in terms of pressure to win? That's an interesting question.
I'm gonna stick to the NFC here, since otherwise we probably get into a deeper conversation. It's interesting. I don't know that there's a ton of pressure. Like Dak in Dallas had a ton of pressure on him last week. I think there was a little bit more pressure on Philly last week. But like, I think Baker has the most to gain, where like he's the one that can probably go out and earn himself a hell of a contract if he keeps this thing going and continues to play well. I don't think that necessarily amounts to more pressure, but I think he definitely has the most to gain. Jordan's already going to get paid, and this is his first year as a starter. I think the pressure is almost minimal. If Purdy goes out and has like, a Baltimore Ravens-esque game, I think the pressure heats up considerably after that. But I don't necessarily know that it's on him going into it. I think it would just be if he like really crapped the bed in this game and did not play well. Then I think the dynamic starts to change a little bit. But as long as he plays well, I don't think there's a ton of pressure. And then Jared Goff, I don't necessarily know that it's there yet. I do wonder if they just flatten out and they don't do enough on offense, is it just like the conversation of the same thing of like, all right, you've got a good quarterback, but he's never going to get you over the hump sort of conversation. But I think all 4 of these quarterbacks are in a really good spot. And I think all 4 fan bases have to be relatively excited, especially based on expectations going into the year of where all of these guys are at.
Yeah, I would agree. Matthew says, how can Wilkes force a young Green Bay and Love into errors? I think the way that they force all quarterbacks into errors, when they're getting home with 4 and allowing to just play coverage with all of the other guys, your other 7, you're in a great spot. If you have to start sending pressure and taking guys out of coverage, things get interesting. So if you can get home with 4, you're probably going to be just fine. You're going to force some errors. But if you can't, and you got to start taking guys out of coverage, I think Love, much like Purdy, would prefer that and would probably do very well in that scenario because they can find the open guys and they can do it very quickly.
Yeah, well said.
I'm going to butcher this name, but I'm going to go with Calikai. And I apologize if I butchered it because you said so many nice things here. You said, Jesse, been following since day one. I love your content. I hope to comment more regularly moving forward. I appreciate that you're an analyst and not just a fan. Well, thank you so much for your support. And he comes back staying true to his word and says, if you think the league is rigged and believe in the Super Bowl theory, he's talking about the logo, the team's color that is the minority has won the last 2, LA and Kansas City. Red is the minority. Well, we'll see. Is it going to be Ravens and 49ers to keep the theory alive? And will the 49ers win? We'll take it. Matt says Green Bay doesn't have the linebackers or safeties to stop us. I think that might be a good observation. Very, very good observation.
Yeah, he's not wrong at all. The Packers, as I mentioned, they don't have the defense to stop San Francisco. Like I said, they've done a lot of the little things better. The hope is to contain, not stop. But San Francisco is going to get points in this game. You can take that to the bank. I think everyone should be fairly confident in that.
Cryptic says all quarterbacks are former number 1 picks except for Purdy. NFC has some crazy storylines and matchups. Goff and Baker getting new life, Purdy irrelevant, and Love replacing a Hall of Famer. That's what makes the playoffs great. There are so many awesome storylines going on. Matt says Devontae Wyatt running his mouth. Pressure on Purdy will force turnovers. Purdy has been the best quarterback delivering under pressure. Yeah, that was interesting. That was way to provide bulletin board material. That's what happens with young teams. Maybe they overstep their bounds. I don't know that was the best strategy, but maybe we'll see.
I agree.
Oh, this is a good question. Brother Bob says, Andy, serious question. Is your kicker worse than ours? We have some questions as well at kicker.
It's going to be a roller coaster. He's got 6 or 7 missed extra points already, which is it's a lot of missed extra points. Green Bay has a lot of faith in him. They're keeping him there, and they think he's going to turn it around. Young kickers go through this. I know you guys are going through, to a lesser extent, a similar sort of situation with a rookie kicker. But this is one where if this comes down to a close game, a rookie kicker in this one missing a kick or doinking one off or missing an extra point, that can easily be the difference in these sort of playoff matchups. So I think both fan bases are keeping an eye on how the rookie kicker, especially if there is conditions, if there is weather, how those guys perform in this one. That can go a long way in really changing the outcome of this one.
Steve says, what surprised you most about the Cowboys game?
The level at which Green Bay beat them. I thought there were 3 options going into that game. Dallas wins by a bunch, Dallas wins by a little, or Green Bay wins by a little. Green Bay winning by a lot never really factored into the calculus going into the game, and they won by a lot. I know, Dallas got 16 garbage time points at the end, but Green Bay had that well in hand by the time they put their little run together at the end. So the fact that they went out and just thoroughly handed that game to Dallas in Dallas, that was by far and away the most surprising aspect. Winning, I picked Green Bay to win, and I'm not just homer picking them. That's usually not the case for me. But I did think that they had the momentum and the right stuff that they needed to beat Dallas. But I never in that capacity.
Yeah, the way that it happened was very surprising. Steve asks, are you worried about Green Bay being overconfident this week?
No, they have a beautiful ignorance about them. I don't think they know that they're not supposed to be there. I don't think they know that they're not supposed to win. I don't think they know. I don't think they care. They're young. Like I said, there's the beautiful ignorance there. They're just playing a really good brand of football right now. And I would much rather have them going in feeling loose and confident and maybe ignorantly so, rather than what we saw out of a team like Dallas last week that was just tight as tight could be and not flowing the right way. And you could tell there was weird vibes with Dak and CeeDee Lamb. It was just all very odd. So no, give me the team that's playing stupidly confident rather than anything else. Give me that team every day of the week.
Yeah, I agree. Ignorance is bliss at this age. Daniel says, every time Jake Moody kicks, I will be holding my breath. Green Bay fans are going to be doing the same. It's going to be a bunch of holding breath when kickers are kicking in this game, I can imagine. Brother Bob says, Andy, I love you being objective, but enjoy this L on Saturday.
It's going to be a good one. I'm just excited for the game. And like I said, I think we'll talk about predictions in a minute. San Francisco has more avenues to victory in this game. I'm just hoping we're in the multiverse, obviously from this side of things, that Green Bay's in that the Tony Stark / Doctor Strange, the one scenario. I'm just hoping I'm in that one multiverse where we get the one scenario where Green Bay finds the way to get the win.
Jesse and everybody else, I'll get to your supers in a minute, but I do have to be respectful of Andy's time. He's got a radio spot, so I got to get him out of here a couple minutes before 11 Eastern. So we're going to get to the final question here and make sure we get through that because it's the most important one, which is the predictions. Now, I find it interesting, and I'll be the judge of this, Andy, because you just said that you are very objective and you will give your honest opinion on who is going to win these games. I want to know from you, who do you have winning this weekend and what is the final score?
Yeah, as of right now, I will say San Francisco. Like I said earlier, I think they just have more avenues to success in this one. Not that Green Bay can't win, not that Green Bay can't shock the world. I like the way they're playing. I am interested to see how San Francisco comes out, not having played last week and not really playing their starters the week before that. And the rest versus rust thing is probably overrated. The better team's just going to go out and find a way to win. But Green Bay's coming off a great win. The one thing that really gives me pause for Green Bay in this one is the fact that Green Bay played 90 snaps of defense last week against Dallas. That is a ton of snaps. That's more than if you played a full game plus overtime in most situations. Not only playing 90 snaps, but then having to go short week to the West Coast, to San Fran against a rested team, against an offense that will maul you on, even if you're on your best of days with your legs underneath you. That's the one thing that's really giving me pause going into this one. If Jordan plays the way that he has the ability to play and has played recently, they've got a legitimate chance in this one. And it's not a matchup I would take lightly if I were San Francisco, and they are playing with a stupid, amazing confidence. But I do think San Francisco has more opportunities. I'm going to say San Francisco by a field goal, but I'm excited to see how this one plays out.
Well, okay. In your scenario, 49er fans are not liking that. If it's a field goal and it's a last second style field goal, we're all going to be very, very nervous in that situation. So as 49er fans, let's not hope for that scenario, but we will take the win. I agree with you. I think what makes Green Bay interesting is that they are playing with house money and they are a young team. They really, truly have nothing to lose. I know that you said a little bit earlier that you don't feel like really any of the quarterbacks have a ton of pressure. I would say if any of them do, it would be Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is leading a team that has the expectations of winning a Super Bowl. He was given this team to start this year. They believe in him as they should. He's playing fantastic football, but this is much different than when he entered the playoffs last year, where he was kind of playing with house money. Even though the team was trying to win a Super Bowl, he had nothing to lose. There was nobody that could take his job. And it was his first time doing it. If he didn't do it, it's like, geez, I was just Mr. Irrelevant anyways. So really, he had everything to gain, and he certainly did. He took the franchise by the neck and took over the quarterback position. But this year, the expectations are very high. This team expected that if he was healthy last year against the Eagles, they would have gotten to the Super Bowl. I think there is some pressure, but I think Brock Purdy performs under pressure, and I expect him to play very well. I think Green Bay playing loose, going forward on fourth downs, maybe not trusting in their kicker can aid in that a little bit. Some trick plays here or there. They really are going to let it all fly this weekend. And teams that don't have a lot to lose can be dangerous in that scenario. That being said, I am taking the San Francisco 49ers 34-24. They will move on to the NFC Championship. But I think Green Bay is a team to watch going forward. It's going to be a lot of fun, this rivalry, as it gets hot, I think, again, with Jordan Love at the helm.
Can't wait. Nah, it should be a really fun matchup. And like I said, I think San Francisco has a lot of advantages in their favor. But again, that's why we play the games. And I'm really excited about Saturday to see, two potential futures of the NFL and Jordan Love and CJ Stroud go against these two superpowers in the 49ers and the Ravens. Let's see how these young kids do and see if they can shock the world. Should be a fun Saturday.
I think that there is one question for you, two, and then we'll get you out of here. I'll finish the super chats. I know you got to hit your radio spot. Jesse says, can Green Bay match our physicality? Where can I get that? Okay, I'll get you all that. Okay, I will answer that question. This one is for you, though. Jesus says, I'm super late. Sorry, but question for Andy. Andy, why are the Packers fans feeling so froggy? No disrespect, but why? It is interesting. That's a great question.
So froggy meaning like they're a little like uppity and like confident, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
like,
a lot of Packers fans are very confident in this matchup. I was actually kind of surprised.
I think there's just a swagger with like house money sort of situation. You got nothing to lose. It's already been a successful season. They shocked Dallas in an incredible fashion. I think this entire fan base just kind of feels like they're ready to take on the world. And again, we'll see what they do against San Francisco. It might be like hey, welcome to reality. This is a team that's experienced the playoffs before and is very much ready for this. But I think they're probably feeling it. And then the other thing is just like fans are going to fan, right? Like they're just always going to talk smack. And then there's really never any comeuppance for it anyway. So I think it's probably a little bit more of that. But I think there is a lot of confidence in Green Bay, and we'll see if it's worthwhile or not coming this Saturday.
Absolutely. Well, I got to say this. We got to get Andy out of here. He's got a radio spot. So I'll get through the super chats and wrap things up here alone. But Andy, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was a lot of fun. You provided a ton of insight. Good luck to your Packers this weekend, although not too much luck. Link is in the description to his channel. As I always say, go follow him, show him some love for giving us an hour of his time. And if nothing else, you can go troll the chat if the 49ers win. I'm sure you guys will do that anyways. Andy, thank you so much, man. Get to your radio spot. God bless. I appreciate you.
Appreciate it as well. Thanks so much for having me. We'll definitely have to do it again sometime. See you guys later.
All right. Bye. All right. There he goes. Great guests. Behind Enemy Lines playoff edition. Let me get to these other super chats and we'll wrap things up. Jesse says, can Green Bay match our physicality? I don't think so. I think that that's going to be an issue for them. And I think that's another reason why the 49ers win. He says, where can I get that shirt? DM me. I will give you the link. No free pub on the channel. I tried to get them as a sponsor. They didn't want to play. I do love their clothing, so I will let you know, but I'm not going to plug them here on the channel. And he says, what is that thing in the background that is displaying the matchups? This here is a sponsor. You can go find the link in the description. It's the very top link pinned. It is phenomenal for all man caves. You can program it to stocks, weather, time, sports, whatever you want. Highly, highly recommend it. Go check them out. Link is pinned in the top of the description. Appreciate you, Jesse. And then Sammy says, Sammy in a pickle, 49ers win, but we'll follow Andy because go Irish. There you go. Follow him anyways. He gave us an hour of his time, and that was pretty awesome of him. Brother Bob says, yeah, here we go. Niners 41, moldy cheese 7. Book it. Well, I used to laugh at your predictions, and then they got pretty accurate for a while, so I don't know that I can do that anymore. Andy's not here anymore, but he says, okay, Andy, don't want you too depressed, 41-17. Nice. I'm sure the Packers fans that are still listening are very happy with those predictions. Keith says, for the Packers, why do you think Shanahan does so well against McDaniel, LaFleur, McVay? Yeah, I'm curious to know. I don't know what Andy would have said to that one. Packers fans, I'm curious to know your thoughts. Yeah, I don't know why you're still here. You're showing love to Andy. It's still showing love to Andy and helping his algorithm. But since you are here, Packers fans, maybe you can answer that question. Why do you think Shanahan kind of owns his old coaching tree? Is it simple as big brother, little brother, just matchups? Why do you believe that? Curious to know. Looks like Lambo, Pac-Man, is going to be at the game. He'll be going into Levi. All right. There won't be many of you there, so enjoy. Let's see. Bobbert says, as a Packer fan, I actually agree that the Niners got, probably going to win. Probably going to win here. I felt like he reads them like a book. All right. That's totally fair. All right, listen. Appreciate y'all. That was a great Behind Enemy Lines. Make sure you subscribe to Andy's channel. Packers fans, if you want to come over to Last Second Sports, show some love over here. We'll definitely take it. You can troll us if you win. And if you don't win, show love anyways. We'll accept you, and then you can help root for us on our way to a Super Bowl. Appreciate y'all. Much love. Stay blessed. I'll be back soon. Oh, on the way out, Samir says, I taught you everything you know, not everything I know. Shanahan. There you go. That's the reason why. Much love. Peace.